Here we go.
I will.
Just started streaming, so in about 15 seconds you should start to see a blue and white screen that says stream starting soon. When you do, hopefully you won't hear my voice as well, because that would be bad, that would be embarrassing.
Nothing yet?
Yeah, you can hear your voice.
Yeah, I can hear your voice, sadly.
Oh, that's funny. Okay, well, here we go, no problemo. So, switching over. Hey everybody, excited to have you here. Thank you for your patience as we are testing out some new tech stuff. We're excited about it. But more importantly, tonight we are debating Christianity versus atheism. Where does the evidence point? And we're starting right now. So glad to have you here, everybody. As mentioned, Christianity versus atheism, where does the evidence lead? We're honored to have these two tag teams here tonight. And I think the thing that I enjoy the most is that it's basically like, if you used to watch the WWE, and you would see that sometimes you'd have like Kane and The Undertaker, they were like a regular tag team sometimes. They didn't always get along. But then you also had, like, let's say, Badass Billy Gunn and Road Dogg Jesse James, like, they were buddies and, like, they were known as a tag team. You kind of have that here tonight because Digital Fiction, as you might call them, the team of Skylar Fiction and Digital Hammurabi, or Dr. Josh, they have their new channel, which, by the way, is linked down in the description. If you want to check it out, it's conveniently there for you. And I'd encourage you, even if you don't like any of the debaters, so you're like, I don't like all of them, like all four of them, I can't stand them. They're going to grow on you. You're going to get to know them, and you're going to say, you know what? Skylar he warmed up my heart, and I can't help but get enough of him. So basically, we would encourage you to check out their links, because even if you're like, you know what, I disagree, at least you can hear their you could say, case in the strongest possible way straight from them. Now, Joshua and Andrew are Christians for tonight. They're also kind of like a tag team. And so I'm going to give everybody a chance to introduce themselves in a second. But Joshua and Andrew are regulars in terms of debating together. And so before I introduce them any further, I had to point that out because I'm a huge WWE fan still. But upcoming debates, we're excited. Does God Exist? Featuring Inspiring Philosophy. That's Mike Jones is behind that channel, and he is coming to debate with Tom Jump. So both formidable debaters, very skilled in rhetoric and very well read on each side as well. And then wanted to mention, if you haven't seen it yet, we are totally encouraging people to check out bethematch.org. This is just a bone marrow donor registry. If you haven't seen it, the long story short of it is, you basically can reach out to them, let them know you want some cotton swabs, they send them to you, you rub them on the inside of your mouth, you send them back, they put your DNA into a database for people with, let's say, leukemias or like cancer of the blood, and you could potentially be called to save somebody's life. So if you haven't heard about these guys, I want you to check them out. It's a great nonpartisan charity, or let's see, what would be the word if it's a, they're not really asking for your money, they're asking for your bone marrow if you're willing to donate it, and they cover all the medical costs. You could say a nonpartisan organization for saving lives. We'll call it that. So it's not Christian, it's not atheist. I think it's something that all of our speakers would be happy to say, yeah, go check them out. Now, for tonight, we are honored to have these guys here. These guys have been participating in these debates for a while, so we've got some seasoned guys. They're not newbies, and I'm going to first start going left to right as you see on the screen, basically introducing Joshua and saying, hey Josh, what have you been up to at your channel, or in terms of your reading, your studying, stuff like that you've been up to recently. And we'll just give like 30 to 60 seconds for each speaker to just share what they've been up to lately at their channel or organization. And then we will start the debate. So, Joshua, thanks for coming on. Glad to have you here. If you want to share what you've been up to, thanks for coming.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm very happy to be here with all of you.
what I've basically been doing is studying. That's my main hobby, and that's what I like to do. For example, today I got up at 3 a.m. and I've been going nonstop. So I'm right now drinking a Monster. So let's put it that way. I hope to be fully awake for this.
Excellent. We're glad to have you here, Josh. And next, Andrew Stratelates. We're glad to have you back. What is new with you? What have you been up to?
Hey everyone. So I've been doing a bit more deeper research into the Anglican Church and theology, which is the denomination that I am, and just doing the normal Twitter stuff. You can find me on Stratelates at twitter.com, and yeah, that's it.
You bet. Well, we're glad to have you here, Andrew. And next, I want to just mention, because I can't say it enough, everybody's links are in the description, including our next fellows, Skylar Fiction. You've been here, and we've been really appreciating Skylar and Dr. Josh, as well as, of course, Josh and Andrew being willing to get in the hot seat, and so nobody can say they shy away from debating. So we appreciate that. Skylar Fiction, if you want to share what you've been up to, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited to be here, man. This is a great channel for good debates. My name's Skylar Fiction. If you don't know, I have the Skylar Fiction show. We do episodes a couple times a week. We usually host Christians for discussions, but not just Christians. We had a guy named Dolo the Pilot Man on the other day. We talked about astrology. Really entertaining conversation. But yeah, we just make fun entertainment and media for you guys to enjoy, mostly around theology, history, and good conversation. If you like these kind of debates, you should check out my channel. I think you'll appreciate it. And of course, my man, Dr. Josh Bowen, my hero, is my co-host of that channel. And he makes everything, this much better. So I'm always excited to be here. So yeah, that's what's been going on lately.
Rad. Well, we're glad to have you, Skylar. Thanks for coming back. And also, Dr. Josh, thanks for coming back. What have you been up to lately? And as mentioned, links down in the description.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on again. By the way, can we be the bushwhackers? Is that possible?
That's awesome. I like that.
Okay. Anyway, no, Dr. Josh, my wife Megan, and I we're Digital Hammurabi on our channel. And we work with Ancient Near East. And she just did a stream today on, there's an Egyptologist who is presented at ASOR who's working in actually the ancient world in modern games. So I don't know enough about it to really comment well on it, but she's got a stream that she did an interview with him. He's an Egyptologist that works with Assassin's Creed, and he was showing, I guess, the work that Egyptologists do to make sure that the ancient Egyptian backgrounds and places that you go and all that stuff are accurate. It was really cool. Last week she was with Dr. Moody Al-Rashid, who's at Oxford, and they did an interview on ancient OBGYN and ancient miscarriages. It was actually a really moving stream, I think. So, yeah, we have a lot of fun. I've got a video coming out, and then I'll shut up. But I've got a video coming out. I just finished the script for Formation of the Pentateuch. So we're going to look at, is Mosaic authorship, a reliable thing? Should we look at, other editorial processes behind the Pentateuch? So it should be good.
Wow, really interesting stuff. And we're glad to have you here. So I don't want to delay much longer. We're going to jump right into discussion. So with that, given that we usually have the affirmative start, and normally we would maybe say something like, is Christianity true? I'm willing to defer to the debaters, so if you guys happen to have a different idea, totally okay. We always try to flip it, so whoever starts the discussion with maybe just a few points, we'll let the other side kind of give a few points, and the more important thing is at the end we try to let the second group, the one that didn't start, gets to finish. So I will assume that Joshua and Andrew, if you want to make a positive case for Christianity, we'll kind of give you just maybe a minute or two to kind of give like a few reasons that you want to kind of throw out there as your main reasons.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Man, writes Lauren Isley, is the cosmic orphan. He is the only creature in the universe who asks why.
other animals have instincts to guide them. But man has learned to ask questions. Who am I? Man asks. Why am I here? Where am I going? Now, according to Aristotle, philosophy begins with a sense of wonder about the world, and the most profound question a man or woman can ask concerns the very origin of the universe. What I'm going to be defending is the view of common sense. I'm talking about the 17th and 18th century Scottish common sense school of philosophy at the University of Aberdeen and other schools in Scotland. In April 8th, 1966, Time magazine published an issue with the question, "Is God dead?" on its cover. But just as Time magazine had raised that question of God's existence in light of the supposed death of God, in which pronounced God altogether dead the next year, a remarkable change took place, merely a few years. Merely a few years later, that is, Time ran the cover, "Is God coming back to life?" There has been a revolution in philosophy, and particularly in Christian philosophy, with a renewed interest in all of the traditional arguments for the existence of God. I'm going to defend a plethora of arguments for the existence of God, including the Kalam cosmological argument, the contingency argument, intentionality. If God, let me summarize intentionality. If God did not exist, intentional states of consciousness do not exist. Intentional states of consciousness do exist, therefore God exists. I'm going to be defending something called libertarian free will. I'm also going to be defending something called the fine-tuning argument, and I really hope that me and the debaters get into it, because many of the constants and quantities are fine-tuned that a common sense notion, you would automatically come to the conclusion that it is designed. Now, the nature of that, what designed it, now that's a question. I'm also going to be defending the moral argument and the resurrection of Jesus from the dead. But I'll go, I think I've spoken enough. I'll go on to Andrew.
Thanks, Josh. So the two fundamental pieces that I believe are the strongest case for Christianity specifically are the answer to the existential question of human existence and natural theology. And I will be defending that Christianity has both the most complete and accurate answers to both these questions.
You bet. Excellent. And then we'll kick it over to Skylar and Dr. Josh. So thanks for Josh and Andrew.
Dr. Josh, you want me to go first?
Please.
All right. So, okay. So I think we should start off by just kind of saying a couple things first. Dr. Josh and I are not atheists. We're agnostics. Just to kind of put that on the table real quick. I would say that I am atheistic towards your religion, though, the Christian religion. I do not believe the Christian God exists. I think the religion is incoherent. I think that it has moral contradictions in God's character. I think God does things that are constantly backwards against his own goals by reading scripture. I think that there are definitely lots of issues that are going to come up when we talk about some of the arguments that you guys are probably going to make in order to argue for God. I would hope that you guys try to keep it in for your own personal God, and we not just get into a general God conversation, because like I said, Dr. Josh and I are agnostic. There could be a God. We don't know. Or I don't know. I'll let Dr. Josh speak for himself. But I'd hope we keep it in the realms of the Christian God. But I would say, once again, my main arguments against him would be he's morally contradictory. He is he constantly goes throughout against his own goals. And then I think from a scriptural type of criticism, I think that Christians oftentimes misrepresent what the Bible is actually saying. They don't understand the cultures that were going on back then and what the original authors were trying to articulate. So I can leave it there, and then maybe Dr. Josh might have a couple of things he wants to say.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily have any expertise really in the things that that Josh and Andrew mentioned. I mean, not ones that that I'd want to argue here. So, I mean, I obviously have a fair amount of training in New Testament Greek and, gone to seminary and all, but, my focus, of course, my PhD is in the ancient Near East and Hebrew Bible. So, I mean, I'm perfectly happy to answer questions or try to address things that seem to be within my purview, but I feel like I'm sort of the fourth wheel. That sounds kind of dumb because fourth wheels are usually pretty good, but
they are pretty good.
I'm the extra wheel
on
the tricycle. How's that? So yeah.
Well, can I ask you a question before we go on?
Oh, please.
This is for Dr. Josh. In your video about me, you discuss miracles. Is that something you're willing to talk about here?
I have a video about you?
Yes, on Can Atheist video rebuttal to me, you appeared on that talking about me and Andrew's, one of me and Andrew's debates.
What did I say?
You said it. I can't summarize it. I think you were talking about miracles. I was wondering that was what the main topic was, and how Can Atheist ended his video, and I was wondering if you wanted to defend any of that.
Are you sure was this Dr. Josh's channel, or was this somebody else's channel? They took a clip of Dr. Josh and put it up on there.
Okay, well that may be so. Maybe so. I thought it was directed at miracles and specifically me.
Who is Ken Atheist?
That's Goddess Cranium's Twitter handle.
I've been on his show once. It was a couple months ago.
Maybe you could just ask the question, like ask either Dr. Josh and I the question, and he could maybe try to address it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Can Atheist discuss this, and I so hope that I can have him on sometime where we can go into the topic of miracles and the so-called impossibility of miracles and what David Hume and others have said about that. I've studied a lot. I was actually Dr. Habermas, who one of our friends interviewed today. He was my mentor in college, and I've read lots of his books and others specifically on miracles, and I would love to discuss it. But I'm not going to go into that anymore. He can come on if he wants to defend that miracles are impossible or unidentifiable or unhistorical. But do you think miracles are possible?
Sure.
But before we go on, I want to say something personal.
Great.
I do suffer from a lot of stress, and I do suffer from a lot of anxiety from a car accident I had when I was a child. And a lot of things have happened in my life, but I think miracles do happen. In fact, I think a miracle happened to me. I was in a coma for a month. I was brought back to life multiple times. The first thing I said when I woke up out of the coma was that God caught me on a pillow. Jesus caught me on a pillow. I'm saying this because there's a context. Craig Keener, in his massive book, Miracles, he goes into this, that miracles are happening all throughout the world. It gives a context, a common sense context, rather than the unmitigated skepticism that comes from the free thought and the internet infidel types. I don't think we're in a position to really be that skeptical of Christianity. What say you?
You sound very angry.
Are you trying to psychoanalyze me?
Not at all. I'm just giving my opinion.
Doesn't sound angry to me at all. What makes you think that he's angry?
Here's what I would say. Okay, so let's just sum up here. So you feel a personal miracle has happened to you. That's fine. You can feel a personal miracles happen to you. I'm not going to argue with your personal experiences. The issue is, now we're going to think about this consistently with your God that you believe in. Horrible things happen to people every day, right? People getting caught. I was in a car accident last year. Okay, I was in recovery for a couple of months in rehabilitation. Destroyed my car, destroyed my computer, really messed me up. Okay, I survived. It's not a miracle. Okay, there are far worse things that happen to human beings. That God just simply steps back and just says, hey, I'm not going to do anything about. Child trafficking, slavery is the highest it's ever been on planet Earth right now.
Can we stick with miracles?
That's what I'm talking about. I'm referring to miracles. You're referring to a specific miracle that helped you, while at the same time this God you believe in who somehow helped you during this car accident, yet he sits back and allows everyone else to suffer disease, starvation.
I'd like to ask
hold on.
please.
I'm literally in the middle of a statement, guys, and you guys are already jumping in.
Well, let's just hear what like Skylar's broad kind of idea is, and then we'll.
So here's the thing. My main idea is, right, like, listen, everyone's going to have their little anecdotes. They're going to talk about a time that they feel that, obviously, yes, you're alive. So you may feel that God intervened in that incident and helped you recover, and now you're here, right? But I'm still in the middle of my sentence. So let me just finish this up real quick. Okay. Then you can say whatever you need to say. But there are people every day, like literally right now, multiple people died of starvation today. Multiple people died of debilitating diseases that only cause lots of suffering to people for no good reason. And God chooses to sit back and not help those people. So I can appreciate your anecdote about how God helped you and you feel this is right, but like it doesn't do anything to actually prove that your Christian God exists. Go ahead.
So if I do understand your logic, because miracles don't happen to everybody, they can't happen to anybody. Is that your logic?
No, I'm showing that your God is inconsistent and your God isn't logic. He's morally contradictory.
How do you know there's no grand plan? Why should we think we should be in a position where we have a sufficient amount of knowledge to know that God doesn't have a sufficient plan, a grand plan? Because I did ask about this today in going on this debate. I wanted to know. I wanted to confirm it, just like Paul does in Galatians 2. He goes back to Jerusalem and he says, have I walked in vain? And he goes and interviews Peter and James, the brother of Jesus, and he wants to know if he has walked in truth or in vain. This is what I asked my parents. I asked, what happened? What was it? Was it just a feeling, or what were there real things? And there were things. There were there were coincidences. Timothy McGrew and his wife Lydia McGrew, that they have a book. I have it somewhere. I need to read it fully. Coincidences. When you look at the totality of all these coincidences, when you look and consider my brother having a dream of my car accident 2 weeks before, and God saying that everything was going to be okay, what is the reason to be skeptical? And I see you looking the other way with this skeptical attitude. I don't really think there is a reason to be skeptical.
Well, I'll answer that question, because right now, as we speak, children are being raped. Right now, as we speak, children. Hold on. Please give me the chance to actually respond to you without interrupting me.
You can repeat.
Right now, as we speak, people are dying of starvation. Right now, a child is going to be born with extreme disabilities that's going to cause them nothing but pain and suffering throughout their whole entire life. And you think that somehow God, because he saved you in some kind of accident, like somehow you believe because you survived, like that's a miracle. People die. People survive car accidents all the time. I hit somebody going 45 miles per hour at a dead with no brakes, right? Some guy literally pulled out in front of me.
What do you do about my brother's dream?
Well, I don't believe your brother had a dream, and I don't believe, even if he did have a dream, It doesn't mean that
Is that based on the evidence or your philosophical assumption?
Josh, you got to let him finish once he's speaking.
All right, fair enough.
What I'm saying to you is this is basically some kind of argument where you're like, well, listen to my experience. I don't know if you're being honest or lying. There's no reason to think that you're lying, right? There's no reason for me to believe that your brother may not have had a dream about you having a car accident. It doesn't mean that it's not coincidental. Listen, I have dreams about car accidents all the time now that I've been in a car accident. What I'm saying is the bigger picture is basically you're trying to make this argument for God, which I think is basically very weak. And that's the idea that you're saying, well, because I had a personal experience and I feel this way.
That's
therefore,
not my argument. That's
okay,
well,
then maybe we should. Well, then let's get to the actual argument, because I'd like to. Right now, you've just told me your personal experience, which is fine. It's anecdotal. I appreciate it. Let's get to the argument, and then we can have the debate.
I was saying that to give in the context that people have miracles all the time. Craig Keener, which I brought up in my opening, he has a whole, I believe it's 1,800 pages, a 2-volume work, the most sophisticated, the most expansive book ever written on miracles all throughout the world. But no, we have to listen to Johnny Skeptic and listen to him dismiss the possibility of miracles. I'm not buying it. Andrew?
I think Dr. Josh said miracles could happen. I don't think anybody denied that possibility.
We should go next.
Yeah.
That's a good question. Josh, Dr. Josh, if you want to respond to anything, just to make sure that we get you a chance, because I know that sometimes it's moving fast.
Oh, no, I mean, I'm okay. I mean, I guess so my initial response of you sound angry was in response to you asking me, what do you say about what I've just said? And I guess I'm kind of going back to what I've seen on Twitter the past couple of days. I mean, it might all be bravado. I don't know. But all I have to go on is what I read. And I mean, you really seem very antagonistic, a little mean. And even in what we've talked about thus far, I mean, you say things that you've used the word infidels. I mean, and then you talk about an experience that you had, and then how could people be skeptical of your experience? And
that's not my argument.
I don't remember saying it was in your argument. I'm saying that you asked me, how do I, like, what do I think about what you just said? And it sounds like you're hurt, angry. I don't know. That was my reaction.
Craig Keener. You're a biblical scholar. You know Craig Keener. You know his book. You might have even read it. What do you think about modern scholars today are defending these arguments, not just from natural theology, which I mentioned a lot of these arguments, and with the revolution in Christian philosophy going on since the 60s and 70s, but scholars are defending miracles. People all throughout the world are saying miracles. So I was given my own experience in the context of a broader thing that's happening, in which skepticism fails to really come to grips with.
Sorry, Andrew, did you want to go, or is it okay if I?
If you have a response, go ahead. Yeah. I'd like to go next, though.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, and I'll keep it short. I guess what I would say is that ultimately my position here, my wife is an Anglican, she's a Christian, and I guess what I would say is probably the similar thing that she would say is that as long as at the end of the day, we say that our faith is based ultimately on something that's subjective to us, I'm okay with that. I don't think that we should get to a place where we're saying, I'm not going to rely on textual evidence or historical evidence or anything like that, and instead I'm going to rely on a subjective experience. I don't think that would be a good move. But if the data that you have and the model that you have allow for an alignment with your subjective experience, I mean, who am I to say otherwise? I think that where it becomes problematic for me, and I know it's problematic for her, and I suspect it's also problematic for Skylar, is when that ultimately subjectively grounded position is then, even if it just feels like it's being forced outward on people that don't have that subjective experience, that's where I would say that it becomes problematic. So.
Okay.
Andrew, you said you were going to come in.
Sure. Sure. So, two things that I want to do real quick. Skylar, seems that if I'm going to summarize your point, you don't know if there is a God, but you believe there are defeaters for the Christian religion.
Correct. Yeah.
Specifically, that the God of Christianity is morally contradictory, engages in actions that are contrary to his own goals, and that Christians misrepresent the purpose of the Bible.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Also, you believe that the existence of natural evils in the world are a defeater for the existence of a Christian God.
No, I don't believe there is actual evil. I think there's a subjective thing that we as human beings call evil, but that's just based on our human opinions.
Okay, so basically we're appealing to opinion when you were saying things like there are child trafficking and slavery in the world and all these horrible things.
No, what I'm appealing to is that your Bible says that God loves children, yet he allows them to be child trafficked, allows them to be raped. And then in the Old Testament, in Leviticus 25, verses 44 through 46, he actually sanctions that they could be sold as slaves.
So my question to you then is this. From the Christian perspective, what is a human?
What do you mean? What is a human?
I mean, quite literally, what is a human? What it makes of a human? Does a human have an immortal part, an immortal part? Or is it just the flesh that
Well, no, yeah, you guys believe human beings have souls, and you believe there's the flesh, the human being, that aspect of it, sure.
Sure, okay, so then I'll ask you this. Is losing the flesh worse? Or is losing something of the flesh equally as bad as losing something of the soul? For a Christian.
Oh yeah, you guys don't seem to care about the flesh as much. It's more important that the soul doesn't go to hell, basically. Like you guys are willing to accept,
right? So,
you're willing to accept like child cancer and child rape as long as at the end that child gets to go to heaven, basically.
Right, and if we're correct, and heaven is the best possible state for a human, that's a reasonable position to take, isn't it?
Well, no, actually, because let me explain why. It's because instead of God having these children, these beings that he loves so much and cares about so dearly, go through that agony and that suffering, he could literally go and make them drop dead. But what he chooses to do, he allows them to go through that suffering, that anguish, that horrific actions, in order for some kind of greater goal, I guess. Okay,
so you're saying that it's that because God can take a greater good out of an evil, that's wrong. Is that what you're saying?
No. What I'm trying to articulate is that God has other abilities. Wrong by my opinion. Are you asking me if it's wrong?
No, wrong from the perspective of the Christian.
Well, you guys will justify anything. That's what you guys already demonstrate that to me. You already acknowledge that God will allow child slavery, child cancer, and child rape in order as long as the soul gets to heaven. You admitted to that. So yeah, you guys are willing to justify anything as long as the children get to go to heaven.
Well, but we just said that if that's the case, that's the best possible outcome for a person. So it is possible for that to be justified by temporal evils.
Perfect. Let me ask you this: if the outcome was still to get to go to heaven, what do you think's better for the child? The child gets raped or doesn't get raped and dies and goes to heaven? What's the better outcome for that child?
It depends entirely on the state of the child's soul. Some people need to suffer in order to reach heaven.
You realize you just argued that some children need to be raped in order to basically have their soul go to heaven?
So I'm going to make quite a little point here that will require me to build a few things. And James, let me know if I'm taking too long. But from the Christian perspective, God is omnipotent, omnibenevolent, and all-knowing, right? So we know that God has full responsibility, but we also know that God is good and would take the best action to meet the best outcome from all people, right? And part of this is the difference in perspective that we have. Skylar, you have children, right?
I do.
When they were infants, did they understand everything that you did?
No, but you know what the difference between me and God is?
Wait.
I would never let my children be harmed if I had the ability not to let them get harmed.
Did you vaccinate your children?
Of course.
That harmed them, didn't it?
No, not in the same level. Not what I'm talking about. We're talking about, first of all, it's not, I don't consider like someone, it's just like if someone was making the analogy, like if somebody was cutting somebody's chest open, right? Like Christians have made that argument to me, like, oh, well, what if you saw somebody cutting open somebody's chest? Would that be being mean to them or hurting them? It's like, well, if they're trying to save their life, we wouldn't use that word as harm. It may be painful to the child to get a shot. Sometimes doctors can do it pretty well, actually, where they're so quick they don't even feel it. But I think really contextually we should be honest with ourselves and what we're talking about, and the kind of things that I've listed already, and I don't want to have to keep repeating, isn't the same kind of concept of what you're talking about there.
Okay, so let's be a little more concrete, right? You're saying that the type of pain that you put an infant through when you give them a shot is not the same sort of pain that a child goes through when, let's say, they're starving, right? That there's some subjective, there's an important distinction between these two. Can you elaborate on what the important distinction is?
If I could, Skylar, do you mind?
Yeah, no, please.
So, and then I'll mute again. But I think maybe a good analogy to this would be if Skylar were in charge of a bunch of other parents, right? He was responsible for them. He said, it is wrong to give your child a shot. Do not vaccinate your children. That's wrong to give them a shot. And then he gave his child a shot. Does that seem like a good comparison, Skylar?
Yeah, no, that could work. And you think about like when you're talking about like the contextual difference would be like, you know, we're talking about something like child abuse compared to giving your child a vaccination, and somehow you're trying to equate them somehow.
So you want
and once again, God has now, and once again, humans have limitations. God is not limited. God can he can make a world where child abuse doesn't happen. So, but he chooses to make.
So let me just summarize your guys' points again to make sure that I understand, right? Mm-hmm. That you're saying that because God is omnipotent, that he has capabilities beyond us, right? But he is also capable of doing things such that it is obvious to us how the good comes out of it. Is that sort of the argument that you're making?
No, I'm not sure what you totally mean by that.
Okay, give me 1 second to think, and then I'll respond again to make sure that I understand what your point is.
Okay, I'll be clear once. Okay, listen, let's say as a parent, I had the ability to make it to where my son never got any diseases, right? No suffering, no diseases at all, right? And all I had to do was go and snap my fingers, right? Mm-hmm. Or I could do it to where I have to give my son a needle this long into his spine in order for him not to get those diseases. Now, I could go with any option because I have unlimited capabilities, as long as it's not logically contradiction. Hold on. As long as it's not logically contradictory, right? And then I chose to go with the harmful, painful way in order to make sure my son doesn't get any diseases.
Okay.
Which one seems more reasonable if you love the child and you care about the child? Which one would you go with?
Okay, so let's elaborate on this a little bit. So you're saying that there's only one obvious outcome to these things, right? Which is the elimination of disease. Right.
I don't like this isn't complicated what I'm saying to you, and like it seems like you're rewording it into something weird that doesn't actually match what I'm saying. So just go with my analogy. Which would you do if you had both options, one that was super painful to your child or one that didn't cause any pain to your child? Which option would you go with?
Well, it depends on what my goals are.
Okay, your goal is for your son. Your goal is that your children don't get any disease, and both ways will reach the same goal.
Okay, so then the question is that the right goal to have, right? Because in addition
oh my God, dude, are you like, this is like dodging and moving in other directions. Like, this is so obvious. Like, you can't answer a direct question about what is going, like, just give me the answer to that question. Yeah, of course you don't. Go ahead, say what you need to say.
You know, one thing I'm wondering, wouldn't mankind get lazy if God was always having to save him from something? Wouldn't he get spiritually lazy and not try to innovate and build hospitals? After all, it wasn't the atheists that have built hospitals throughout history. It's the Christians who built the first universities, the first hospitals. It is Christianity that is saving people today. I do have one quote from you from a person in China, a scholar in China, when he's discussing Christianity there. This is what he says. Quote, one of the things we were asked to look into was what accounted for the success, in fact, the preeminence of the West all over the world. We studied everything we could from the historical, political, economic, and cultural perspective. At first, we thought it was because you had more powerful guns than we had. Then we thought it was because you had the best political system. Next, we focused on your economic system. But in the past 20 years, we have realized that the heart of your culture is your religion, Christianity. That is why the West is so powerful. The Christian moral foundation of social and cultural life was what made possible the emergence of capitalism and the successful transition to democratic policies. We don't have any doubt about this. To bring an end to suffering, to improve the well-being of countless millions of people. It was not atheism. It was the moral foundation of Christianity that viewed people in the image of, created in the image of God, that wouldn't be morally ambiguous and say there are no objective morals. They're just our opinions. That did not move mountains and did not build our society.
None of that, what you just said, actually had to do with the points that I was making. And yes, because people have better morals than God does in the Bible. Bravo. I applaud those Christians for actually making. I'm just talking again. Once again, let me get my word out there, Josh. Please try. So here's the thing, right? Is like, yeah, you could point to, yes, there are Christians that have done great things. Never an argument that Josh and I have made. And once again, you referred to atheists. We're not atheists.
Josh, you have to let them finish.
Yes, and listen, going through this game where I'm like, what atheist? Like, this is irrelevant. Atheism is just the belief that gods don't exist, right? It's just a simple viewpoint. Listen, Christians do good things. Christians do good things. The points that I was making had nothing to do with what you just rambled about. I was specifically talking about what your God does, the God that has this perfect morality that you guys derive morality from, and you guys didn't want to address that issue. And you went into this argument about how Christians do good things. Well, I agree, Christians do good things. Doesn't actually attack what I said. So if one of you actually want to make an argument or actually address what I said and answer directly instead of avoiding the question, I would be happy to do that. Or if you have a question for Dr. Josh and I'm happy to answer it.
Christianity believes in a progressive theology. Compared to the cults and tribes around them, there are lots of scholars who think the Old Testament was far superior morally. But just as we can grow into a more accurate understanding of how the world works through the scientific process, by the way, the earliest scientists, they were Newton, Copernicus, Kepler, Galileo. They were Christians. It emerged in a theological context. And I have a plethora of quotations that speak to this. It wasn't atheism. It was thinking that the universe was created in an orderly way that could be discovered by natural laws, that it was created in a rational way that could be discovered. Paul Davies, a physicist, said, science began as an outgrowth of theology. And all scientists, whether atheist or theist, accept an essentially theological worldview. You are indebted to Christianity for all these things, especially our understanding of theology, which is progressive, just like science.
I know we're in that.
I have a question for Dr. Josh.
Please, because there was no actual addressing of any of the issues that I brought up. And once again, you started talking about Christians and the good things they do, which isn't what the debate's about. But go ahead, ask Dr. Johnson.
Say a good thing atheism has done.
Well, hold on a second.
It's
Andrew,
not the debate.
Andrew wanted to say something, Josh.
Yeah, Dr. Josh, I'm curious. Do you think that affirming the truth or pursuing the truth is a subjective choice?
Affirming the truth is a subjective choice?
Right, because you were talking earlier about how at the end of the day, it comes down to a subjective assessment of how you orient yourself towards, say, the question of Christianity or the question of God. And I was wondering if you believe that there's a similar aspect of subjective choice when one affirms truth or desires to pursue truth.
Sorry, is it a decision to pursue truth?
Roughly, yes.
Yeah, I would say so, sure.
Okay, I guess then the question I have is, then at the end of the day, pursuing truth is a subjective choice as well, isn't it?
I mean, without thinking about the question too deeply, I'm sure.
Yeah, so in that sense, religion is no different than the existential, is the same sort of family resemblance of the existential question of whether one pursues truth.
What? What do you mean?
Well, I mean, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Josh, that you said that at the end of the day, it came down to a subjective assessment on the part of the individual for whether or not someone has faith in Christianity, right?
Oh, yeah, sure.
And I am saying that at the end of the day, it also comes down to the individual whether one chooses to pursue truth.
I don't know what's so complicated about that. What's the point?
Maybe, Andrew, if I could, maybe if I develop my idea a little bit more. I remember having a conversation. It was one of those 4:30 in the morning conversations while we were studying in the library for Sumerian class that was coming up. Those can be very religious experiences. Sorry, that was supposed to be funny. It probably wasn't.
You have
I find you funny, Doug. Yeah.
It wasn't funny. I'm sorry. It fell flat.
Actually study in college?
Huh?
Did you actually study in college?
Well,
I get you. Sorry.
By the way, what kind of Kool-Aid is Skylar drinking tonight?
Oh.
No, just go ahead and answer the question.
But I remember having a conversation with the guy that was my best friend going through Hopkins, and he was an evangelical Christian, and I had left evangelical Christianity, and I was an agnostic. And, I remember sitting and talking to him as we were translating these texts, and I said, I don't want to say his name, but, how do you know that, that Jesus is real and that the God of the Old Testament is real? And I mean, how do you know one? He said, well, that's a subjective experience that I've had. I mean, so he knows all the ancient Near Eastern texts that I know. He can read Sumerian and Akkadian, he can read Hebrew and Greek and Aramaic and blah, 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 all the stuff that I can do. He knows all the stuff that I know, but he knows it more. He's an amazing scholar. And he said, we got down to it, and I said, how do you know it's not Enki? How do you know that's not Enlil talking to you? And he said, well, I mean, I can't prove that, right? At the end of the day, it's I believe I've had an experience with Jesus Christ, and I can't prove that to you. I can't demonstrate that to you. I can't go through a logical process that would demonstrate that. I can just tell you what my subjective experience with him has been and what it's done in my life. And that's, I think that's what I mean by that. At the end of the day, he would say, I can't demonstrate that to you, but I believe it because I've had that experience with the divine, and I believe that divine is Jesus Christ. That's what I mean. help at all. I don't know if it helps.
Yeah, and I guess one of the fundamental questions in epistemology, or the study of knowing things, is whether or not humans are capable of having beliefs or thoughts in their mind that correspond to what's in reality. And they're basically two thoughts, schools of thought, right? Roughly, there's the radical skepticism that says, no, we can never really know if the thought that we have corresponds perfectly with something outside of our mind. And then the other view is that, yes, it is possible, and they differ on the exact mechanisms and so on and so forth. But the thing that you run into with sophisticated ways of looking at things is, in some sense, they both have strong explanatory power, but they have very different explanations of how the universe works, right? So to the radical skeptic, if you draw the conclusions fully, everything is basically down to language games and word games, and who has power, and how powerful are their ideas to sway others. Versus the more Enlightenment and classical way to look at it is that through this discussion and looking at things, we can imperfectly and approximately reach the truth. And if we all put our heads together, so to speak, through space and time, we can...
That's called the faith in science.
Yeah, and it's actually faith in human cognitive abilities, right? And then we get into what grounds our belief that human cognitive abilities can actually find the truth. And the Christian or the theistic answer is that there's a correspondence between human nature and the underlying nature of reality, which is what it means to be made in the image of God, or to have the logos.
Yeah, the thing is, I mean, this is just all coming down to claims, though. Like any kind of like presuppositionalism is basically just going to have the Christian claim that God is the basics for reality and truth, and that's how Christians are able to have knowledge and things like that. What I would ask is, maybe to kind of get this conversation back onto the main topic here, would be like, can one of the Christians define what righteousness is in the Bible, what it means to be righteous with God?
It means to have one's will fully aligned with God's.
Okay, perfect.
The natural law that's inside of us.
And how do children have a righteousness with God?
Children that are younger than the age of reason have some sort of natural righteousness with God, as all creation does.
Oh, perfect. Good. I'm glad you agree. So, like, when we go to Sodom and Gomorrah, and Lot is having a conversation with God, and they're having a debate between each other, not a debate, a conversation between each other. And remember, you might remember the phrase when they're like, hey, if 20 people were righteous in this city, would you save the city? He's like, yes. And it gets all the way down to like one righteous person.
Negotiating with God, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. So, right. So this was a city where, hold on. Hear me out. Let me finish it out here. So, as you said, yeah, under the age of accountability, children are righteous. So in a city of Sodom and Gomorrah, there are obviously children, because cities have children.
I said that children have a natural righteousness, as all creation does.
Exactly, right? So these children, so are you trying to argue that in the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, those cities, those children weren't righteous?
Well, you said that. I said that to be righteous is to have one's will aligned with God.
Exactly. And then and I asked you if children would be under that, and you said yes, under the age of accountability.
So let me speak more precisely. On the age of accountability, children don't really have an independent will. Over the age of accountability, they do, and then can be righteous or unrighteous on their own actions. So
do children under the age of accountability, are they righteous in the eyes of God?
They can't have. They are morally indifferent. They can't make moral decisions.
So yes or no, they're righteous or not righteous?
It's an undefined question. It's like asking if a rock is
What
real.
is
And we're back to dodge number 2. Okay, that's fine. I mean, this is what we're going to get, I guess. Apparently, the whole conversation is dodging.
Are you trying to convince yourselves? I want to know what your argument is. What for atheism? This is Christianity versus atheism. If
No,
I'm
we're not atheist, and that's what I'm atheist against the Christian religion. I can give you arguments. Well, the one I was giving you, but it seems like you're not grasping it. So the idea that you're basically you have to already hold on. I'm articulating it to you right now as we speak, so you can understand it. So when children, if you either can claim that children are righteous or they're not righteous. So you're going to have to claim children, people under the age of accountability, aren't righteous in the eyes of God. Right.
Well,
so when Lot was having this conversation with God, he was like, if there was one righteous person in the city, he would save the city. But God says there is no righteous people, so therefore there are no righteous children in the city of Sodom and Gomorrah.
Can I just say something before Andrew, before you go?
As long as it's addressing the actual topic, that would be great.
Well, I think you're the one that's mad. I think
I'm not.
Dr. Josh is.
I love Christians.
Well, I do think atheists are mad at God, and from listening to you, it does sound like
we're
that.
agnostics.
Oh, yes.
There's nothing to be mad about. I'm just as mad as the Christian God as I am at a Harry Potter movie or Freddy Krueger or any kind of imaginary
Let's be
character.
honest. You don't live according. Let's be honest. You don't live according to your own agnosticism or your own viewpoint. I'm
happy to address that. But I would love to steal a point. So go ahead and tell me how, and then we'll go back to the point, though. How do I not live according to my agnosticism?
In your daily and your personal life, you live as if God does exist by treating people as made in the image of God, not just as means, but as ends in themselves.
No, I treat people. No, that's an empty assertion.
You say things like David Hume might, but in everyday life, he believes in causation or he believes in objective morality. The atheists can't have it both ways. They borrow from the second story while trying to live in the first story. That's what Francis Schaeffer tried to argue.
I appreciate your opinion and you thinking that I live in a certain way, but we're having a debate based on evidence and facts. So, like, if you'd like to present some, that would be fantastic.
Your own life is your own life.
I don't live my life if morals are objective.
You don't torture your kids, do you?
Yeah, I don't have to have objective. Hold on, Josh.
Value.
I don't have to believe morals are objective. I don't have to believe morals are objective in order not to believe that torturing my kids is a good thing, right? Like I should say how.
Why do you treat them?
Because I love them. I care about them. Like, that's emotion. That's subject.
Love just an emotion.
It is. Yes, that's exactly what love is an emotion.
Is it rational to act on emotion?
Say that again?
Is it rational to act on emotion?
It is sometimes, sure.
When?
When, like loving my children and not wanting to harm them?
Can you give a couple more examples?
Okay. It's when I love my wife and I don't cheat on her.
Okay.
What else would you like?
When you're scared,
You want to
45 at you and you duck.
Yeah, like where I love my brother, Dr. Josh Bowen, and I'm honest with him and I care about him. Like, we try to do what's good for each other. Like,
I don't know if mine was a good example, but it's the one that.
But that's real. No, that's actually Dr. Josh. That's actually a really good example. When you have an emotion.
Why do you value honesty and own commitments? Why do you think those are important?
Could I maybe? Sorry, Skylar. So look, I mean, you guys are fairly well steeped, it seems, in philosophy, and you know that this certainly isn't my field. But I guess I would say that is God. I mean, I think I know what your answer would be, but to sort of pose it, I wonder if evolutionary processes aren't also able to answer the question of why we do the things that we do. Why is it that we don't kill each other? Why is it that we don't steal from one another? Why is it that we love, one another? Is it not possible also that natural evolutionary processes account for that sort of thing?
Can I field that one?
Oh, please. Oh, sorry. You were asking Josh.
Yeah. So the problem with that is evolutionary processes can explain everything and thus explain nothing. So you can look at evolution and come up with a speculation or a narrative of why, for example, men who rape are more genetically successful. And that's why there's a certain population that rape, right? And then we can also say, well, there are evolutionary reasons why, we punish rape, and the men who punished rape were more successful, and so on and so forth. The bigger issue with these types of arguments is that if the purpose of evolution is not guided but just survival, that doesn't give any grounds for us to believe that any of our cognitive abilities are truth tracking, right? Because the fact that I develop certain beliefs doesn't mean that, or humans tend to over time, or the wise do, or whatever, doesn't mean that those beliefs are actually truth tracking. It means that they're evolutionarily advantageous to have. And so that ends up being a feeder for all human knowledge.
Can I add one thing that I don't think gets talked about much in these conversations when it comes to evolution and morality? I totally agree, Andrew, and I want Dr. Josh, I do want you to address this. This is an evolutionary argument for the object nature of morality. Have you heard of the scholar named Jonathan Haidt?
I have not.
He is, I believe he is a philosopher and a psychologist, and I think a clinical psychologist. He talks about the Holocene period. Now, the Holocene period took place about 12,000 years ago, and that was an incredible amount of ingenuity on our part. That's when people started to cross the land bridge and to get over here. But the point is, it involved something called a multi-level selection, and that argues against Richard Dawkins, the selfish gene, this multi-level selection. It kind of died out in the 60s and 70s, but it's coming raging back. So if God can show us things progressively, like science, like I argued before, and like he shows us a better way to treat others, when we reflect more on God, when we study more, when we grow in spiritual maturity, we can have a better knowledge of science, morality. Why can't our multi-level selection through the evolutionary process help ensure God communicates objective morality to us? It seems that's a good evolutionary argument for the objectivity nature of morality.
Well, the main reason, there's no reason to believe morals are objective in the context which you guys are saying them. You guys are believing that morality is objective because it's rooted in God's very nature. All right. So when you make a claim that would basically mean that morality, things are right or wrong regardless of human minds, right?
No,
which there's no evidence.
Only if human minds are disconnected from it.
What do you mean? How would they, you would believe something would be right or wrong because it's according to God's nature, correct? Like, is that the kind of Christian you are, or do you believe something differently?
So God's nature, there are three convertible things of God's nature that you have to keep in mind. God is truth, God is being, and God is good. So all three of these things are convertible.
Okay, so what does that mean to be God is good?
That means that when we speak of goodness, we're speaking of things that are aimed towards God. Exactly.
That's the nature part. That's exactly what I was talking about. So yes, morality is rooted in God's nature. So can you guys demonstrate that objective morals exist, or are you basically just going to appeal and just claim that they do?
Well, I think I have an argument. Argument.
I'll give a quick one, and then you can go, Josh. I can discern the existence of objective facts through my cognitive abilities, and moral facts have the same markers that other philosophical truths have. So,
so what's the difference between a fact and objective fact? Let's distinguish those first.
As far as I know, there is no difference.
Okay, perfect. So you believe there are facts. I believe there are facts also. Good. So now let's talk about moral facts. Now demonstrate that moral facts exist.
Demonstrate that facts exist.
What, you're answering a question with it. This is the third dodge now you've done to me when I've asked you a specific question and you seem to be running away from it. Like, is this a debate or is this a dodge every question Skylar Fiction asks you conversation?
If you can answer what a fact is, and
a fact would be information that correlates to reality.
Wait, Skylar. If you can demonstrate that facts exist, I will demonstrate that objective facts.
Okay, perfect. So when I say a fact, I'm being something that correlates to reality, right? So
Okay,
a fact would be, hold on, I'm going to do it right now. A fact would be is that I am not your Christian God. You need me to demonstrate
that?
How would your
Yes. Okay. Hold on.
How would your agnostic
No.
based
Hold on, Josh.
Wait.
Ready?
Let me clarify.
I'm going to demonstrate. No, hold on. I'm going to
No,
demonstrate.
you're going to demonstrate that that's a fact.
Yes, I'm going to demonstrate that it's a fact. That it is not false. It is not a lie. It is not untrue.
No. You have to demonstrate that that corresponds to reality.
Yes, exactly. I can do that. How it corresponds to reality, right? So if I was your God, could I lie? If I was the Christian God?
No, you could not.
So I'm not your Christian God. If I were your God, then I would be lying right there. Therefore, I have now demonstrated that I am not your Christian God.
Please demonstrate that that's a demonstration.
Wait,
All right,
hold on.
welcome to Silly Town.
I think
Thank you
that's
very
the
much.
worst argument in the history of Western philosophy, to be frank with you.
Whenever you guys are ready to make arguments and not just say silly things, I'm happy to hear them. But so far, this has been kind of laughable.
If I could just for a second, because I had to write it down because I have MS and I forget shit. So stuff. Sorry, James. So something that you said, Andrew, and I'm sorry if you hear the baby crying in the background. I may have to go pick him up here in a second.
Oh no!
Sorry.
Sorry.
Let me get it out quickly so that I can mute again. You made the comment that because evolution answers everything, it answers nothing. And one of the things that I think is interesting about that, I'm not saying that you're wrong, obviously, because I don't know that I know, but it's very similar, if not the same, as what you were saying about your belief in God. Because when Skylar was saying, oh, God does X and that's against, well, how do you know that there's not a bigger plan, right? It does seem like from the Christian perspective, ultimately, the answer has to come down to, well, God is omnibenevolent, he's omnipotent, he's omnipresent, whatever, and he's omniscient. And so he knows what's best, and we don't always know that. And so we just have to believe, we have to trust that an all-powerful, all-knowing, all-loving being is going to do what's right. It does seem very similar to it answers everything. So then
Sure. And this is a distinction that occurs in different branches or denominations of Christianity, and actually between Islam and Christianity as well. In the more traditional Christianity that's sort of grounded in the first 1,000 years of the United Church, what we will say is that there are aspects of God's nature that are discernible through human reason and can be evidenced through signs and wonders, right? So in some sense, to that way of thinking, we can use our logic and science actually to confirm, in some sense, some of the promises made by God, and that we don't have to take everything on faith, but there is good evidence for it, right? Just like there's still a leap of faith that you're going to trust, say, your wife, right? But there's a history and an analysis that you've gone through that makes that leap smaller. And so,
can I reply to Skylar?
Well, 1 second, if Andrew's.
So let this dude finish at least what he was saying.
Yeah, and that's why certain strains of theistic thought, like it's called occasionalism, right, that believes that there is no nature, but God basically makes everything occur as a miracle, I don't think are very substantive, because they explain everything and thus explain nothing and leave no no domain for human knowledge to grow or the human mind to engage with the problem.
I mean, I think the same would be said from an evolutionary standpoint. And boy, I'm really going far afield here because I have no biological background at all. But I suspect that biologists that make statements like, we don't kill each other every chance that we get because, there's a hypothesis that says that by doing so, it would mean that it would be more, dangerous for us. If we killed everybody, then we'd always be in fear. And so as part of a community, we learned I don't know. But I suspect that there's good reason behind making that sort of determination. So I think that would probably fit well with the evolutionary explanation in the same way.
So the other issue with the evolutionary explanation is it can explain things that are obvious in action, right? Like how should we treat our neighbor in some sense. But they don't explain why we have the ability to, say, comprehend transfinite numbers or engage in elaborate systems of art that are
can I
from action.
Actually,
I'm done if you want to go, Josh.
I'm so sorry about interrupting you and everybody, but everybody's doing it. I did want to say something to you, Dr. Josh. When you were talking more about evolution, I wanted to read to you a quote by evolutionary biologist Michael Roos, a philosopher of science. He explains, morality is a biological adaptation no less than our hands and feet and teeth. Considered as a rationally justifiable set of beliefs about an objective something, ethics is illusory. I appreciate that when someone says, love thy neighbor as thyself, they think they are referring above and beyond themselves. Nevertheless, such reference is truly without foundation. Morality is just an aid to survival and reproduction. Any other deeper meaning is illusory. The point is, we don't live according to that philosophy. That's the blind evolutionary philosophy. Skylar doesn't live according to that. He treats his kids with objective worth. He goes into another worldview, and thus his life falsifies his own words.
Okay, you need to demonstrate your claims. This is the problem. It's like it's just claim that you're making about how I treat my children.
Skylar, hold on.
It's not basic.
Josh, you got to let him finish.
Sorry.
Okay.
And Skylar, I'm interrupting you too, man. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we need to make the distinction, and again, in good Josh form, I have to apologize. I'm sorry. I feel like I'm leaving my field again, but I feel like there is a distinction to be made between objective morality that we as a community or a group of people or whatever, that we agree upon, like the rules of chess, maybe. We agree upon those things, and those moral facts become moral facts in that objective sense because they're grounded in us. We've determined them. Now they're outside of us.
Josh, you have to let him finish.
Sorry. Josh, I promise. I'll be quiet in just a second, man. I know you're good. You're good. And I wonder if objectivity in that sense is not having been grounded in the community, having been grounding in, whatever from that evolutionary process, is not just as likely. And it would account for objectivity, right? And how Skylar interacts with his children, because in this community, in this area that he lives in this culture, we view, doing things to children that are bad as we determine them, like beating them or whatever, as objectively living according to those objective things that have come from us, would also account for other countries, for example, that don't consider killing a woman who has lost her virginity or something. That is not objectively bad, because in that community, they, as a group, have created objective moral facts at that level, and they abide by them. And in that sense, they are objective. Sorry. Okay. That's it.
Can I respond real quick?
Yes, just one second. I just want to let people know we'll move into the Q&A really soon. So go ahead, Andrew.
Sure. So the issue with that is, if you take that to its conclusion, it implies either that we should be isolationist, basically, and not judge other cultures, even if we find what they're doing abhorrent, or that we should simply conquer them and impose our morality on them. And neither of those are live options, really, for any culture that I know. And it basically ends up saying that roughly speaking, the problems with like totalitarian regimes isn't that they were totalitarian, it was that they were ineffective in conquering everyone and making them choose those objective morals. And so there are conventions that are like the rules of chess, or like, you know, a good one is what side of the road we drive on, the left or right. And if you go against that convention, you're actually engaging in something immoral, of putting other people in danger, violating the rule of law, so on and so forth. But then there are other things like that are higher level, right, that allow us to determine what conventions we should have. A great example is funeral practices, right? All cultures agree that we should honor the dead, but some African cultures think that the way to honor the dead is to eat them, while our Western culture would consider that a sacrilege, or that would be desecrating the body. We both agree on the higher level thing of respecting the dead. We disagree on how it's implemented.
Sometimes we agree on those things, but like, this is the point. Like, nowhere in this whole time we've been having a conversation, and I've been trying to get you guys to demonstrate that objective morals exist, has anybody made an argument for it, right? Like, I'd still love it, huh? And basically, pointing to my subjective morals, like how I live my life. But here's the thing that I think a lot of people don't get. Like, how I live my life doesn't dictate whether morals are objective or subjective. It doesn't matter how I live. I could be contradictory. I could live my life contradictory. Hold on, Josh. Chill out. I could live my life in a contradictory manner where I say one thing and I do another, right? It doesn't actually determine the fact of whether morals are objective or subjective. Simply pointing out how I live my life, and you have no clue actually how I actually live my life, which is the most hilarious part about it. You just are just assuming from the little bit, the 2% that you see of me on YouTube, and think like, oh, well, this is how Skylar lives his life. It's like, listen, human beings care for their children. Even the example you gave, like, I love my children. I wouldn't want to harm them. There's nothing objective about that. It's just my emotions and my opinions. So whenever one of you would actually like to make an argument that objective morals exist, or actually address anything that I've said during this whole conversation and not dodge the question, that would be great, because I haven't seen that yet. This was supposed to be a debate on whether, like, atheism, we're basically seeing the Christian God versus not the Christian God, or no God, basically. And I haven't heard an argument from you guys, or a direct question or an answer to any of those questions.
So I'd like to respond to this really quickly, but I know we're going into QA. James, what's our time?
I have more time, by the way. I can go as long as you guys would like. By the way, just to let you know, James.
Okay, that's great. I would love to extend it. Let me go.
One thing, Josh, forgive me, is Andrew. Remember, Josh, Andrew does have to leave at a decent time, and so I want to respect his time too. So we probably should move
I'll go
into
against both.
Okay, well, but we want a chance for Andrew to be able to answer questions during the Q&A too, at least for a little bit.
That's fair. We should be fair.
So we can, and Josh, if you want, you know, we can always do this again. Hopefully, we'd love to have all of you back. You guys are friendly guys. You guys are energetic guys. So we appreciate that. And if you're all right, if everybody's all right with it, it's probably a good time to move into Q&A. We do have a lot of great questions, so I think this will be a lot of fun.
Please.
But I had one compliment for Dr. Josh.
Okay.
You're like the Justin Timberlake of near ancient biblical research.
I'm sorry, I'm staying muted because the baby's screaming, but I really appreciate that. That sounds like a real compliment. I'll take Justin Timberlake.
That's a pretty high honor.
did get to hook up with Britney Spears back in the day. Sorry.
Y'all certainly can dance around arguments.
Nothing's been addressed this whole
Did
conversation.
you just say that I could dance around arguments, Josh? Come on, man.
Come on, bro. I mean, from the team that didn't answer a single direct question the whole entire time.
We're gonna
dancing around.
We're gonna move into the Q&A.
I like it every time. Let me go to Dr. Josh. Nice guy.
We can, Josh, I let you give him the Justin Timberlake compliment. So, and you got your zinger in. So we will now move into the Q&A. And I want to say thanks for everybody's questions. Really interesting questions. And if you're new here, hey, we're glad you're here. Whether you're an atheist, Christian, all the different definitions of atheist, so lack of belief, or the more philosophical or scholarly definition of positively asserting there is no God in philosophy, whatever you are, we're glad you're here. And so feel free to hit that subscribe button for future debates as we hopefully get to have these gentlemen back on tonight. I've enjoyed this a lot, and it's always a pleasure. So it's lively and it's interesting, a lot of interesting ideas. So with that, I will start going through questions and or comments. So forgot to mention at the start, the way we do super chats is we just put them at the front or the start of the Q&A. And want to say thanks for your super chat, Mr. Cook Jr. Sorry about that. So Mr. Cook Jr. has a response for Josh and Andrew. And we usually, if it's a comment, we ask that those be used for super chats. And then otherwise, any question, if you have one, put at Modern Day Debate. Sorry, just saw something weird in the comments. So put at Modern Day Debate and then your question for whoever debater you want, and we'll ask it to them. So with that, thanks for your super chat, Mr. Cook Jr. And he said the whole red pill approach is reading from a Word document and trying to prove Christians have done good things. Not convincing, prove a God or stop. So we'll give a response opportunity for Andrew and Josh if they want to say something to that super chat.
I want to. I teach American history and world history, and I see what Christianity has done for the world. Oh, there have been some bad things. Most of those bad things have been severely exaggerated by atheism, the infidel type crowd. But the type of things that Christianity has brought into the world, polyphonic music, literature like Dante and Chaucer, there's so many other things. Architecture, I could go on and on and on. Atheists should be lucky Christianity exists, and I think we can say you're welcome.
Okay.
So my response is, it's not a Word document; it's a text file.
Gosh, just admitted to the whole point of what the comment was about, which is you just talking about what Christians do that are good. Like, I could name lots of things atheists do that are good. I got lots of atheists that have done wonderful things. I'm sorry.
So we will go.
I have atheist friends that run homeless shelters, that go out and feed the poor constantly, go out and help victims that have been abused as children. There's tons of things that atheists do. And like the silliness of this argument that you're going to think like as if like I would never make it. Hold on, I would never make an argument that Christians don't do good things.
Let's move on, please.
We will move on, and we appreciate it, Mr. Cook Jr. Thanks so much. So next we have. Oh gosh, forgive me, the name didn't copy in. So let me know if this is your super chat. We want to say thank you for your super chat. When I did the copy and paste into the Q&A, it only took the question. Sorry about that. But this individual had said, I find it objectionable that Joshua tried to tell Skylar how he lives his life. Anywho, check out my YouTube if you like underground indie music. Good show. So thank you so much for the super chat. And it's ironic that that was the one that I actually didn't get the name of. Sorry. So let me know in the live chat so we can tell people to go to your channel to check out that indie music. I'm really sorry about that. I'm kind of juggling a lot of balls at once, and sometimes I just fail. J School account, thanks for your super chat. There was no comment. I don't know if you meant to do it just as a kind gift or if you maybe missed the comment, but we're very thankful.
Copying the atheists.
Next, we have Kent Hovind, CPA. Kent Hovind, certified public accountant. I kind of doubt it's his actual accountant.
No,
he
it's
says,
not.
I use that joke every time, basically. He's a regular here. He says, and remember, we will give a chance to let you respond, Josh. So he says Joshua Brister is still in a coma. So Josh, if you'd like to respond, you may. And that was from Kent Hovind's CPA.
This is the type of rhetoric and lack of empathy that I believe the so-called free thought atheists have expressed. I do believe that because of my anxiety and a lot of things, that, you know, it wasn't completely atheist's fault. It had a lot to do with my head injury. That why I took things too much, and I do wish we could work together. The person who got me out of it and is kind of brought me back to God is Andrew. And Andrew, I know I've said this before, but I want to thank you so much. I feel, because I've read so many Anglican books by Anglican scholars, and I feel such love in my heart towards everybody. I may come across as wanting to debate these, but I want to debate these because I sincerely think, you know, our atheist brothers are deceiving themselves. But they're, in my opinion, you are made in the image of God too. So I would do anything for y'all. So thank you, Andrew.
You're very welcome. I appreciate it.
Gotcha. And thank you again. Oh, Genius Tracks. I'm sorry. So Genius Tracks was the person who gave that kind super chat where they had said, good show, and then they had said, check out their underground indie music. So highly encourage you, if you do enjoy, I have a feeling, Skylar, do you enjoy, do you happen to enjoy underground indie music, or maybe not?
I used to. I'm old now, man. I've grown old with children, and I don't get to listen to the stuff that's hip anymore, as they say in the young culture.
Have your arguments grown old?
I'm not with it anymore.
No, I just unanswered from this conversation more than anything else. But hey, I'm hoping one day I talk to somebody and I can have a good discussion with. James was really good actually when he came on my channel. He was a good discussion. He had thoughtful answers. But this so far, no.
We've got, so Genius Tracks has underground indie music. If you like it, you know where to find it. And yeah. Taliesin Oberlander, we totally appreciate your super chat. Thanks so much. That just came in, and they said, well done to Skylar for revealing Andrew's evasiveness and dishonesty this evening. God forbid he answer direct questions. So,
God forbid it indeed. May God bless me with honesty and forthrightness.